A lot of people make the mistakes of adding cues into behaviors. We see so many people come in, they're like, my dog knows sit, my dog knows down, my dog knows all these commands. So we ask them, we're like, all right, we'll tell your dog down. And they'll tell the dog down, and one of two things happens. One, the dog has no clue what they're saying if they just give that verbal command. Or two, they'll do this, down, down, down. And what happens is when you're doing that, the dog's not listening to what you're saying. They're simply responding to the visual cue that you're providing. So when we're conditioning in a cue, we have to make sure two things are happening. One, the cue is coming well before any sort of visual, any help or anything that we give happens. I simply stand there, I say down, just by itself. You have a pause to allow the dog to process that cue, hear it, and then have that cue predict something. And then you give help after the fact, after your pause, in as little of a way as possible. So in her case, we're using the downward pressure on the leash, and for the majority of repetitions, I was getting away with just the littlest bit of pressure to give that help, because we want to fade that cue out ultimately, so she just responds to the down command. Now, a lot of people get in a rush, we'll start a new command, we'll do like 4 repetitions, we'll be like, why isn't she getting it? I would tell them, in all of Pavlov's studies that he did on classical conditioning, conditioning in cues, conditioning in behaviors, one thing he found to be true when he was conditioning in a behavior is that at a bare minimum, it takes roughly 50 to 60 repetitions that are perfect, which means perfectly timed, perfect amounts of help following that cue before the dog starts to make that connection. And we saw that to be true over there as she got to the point where we were getting perfect repetitions because she was getting smooth with that leash pressure. After literally 50 to 60 repetitions of doing it in that room, we finally got her starting to respond to that cue solo by itself. Have a lot of patience with this stuff. Make sure you're doing things in the proper sequence, and do not be surprised that it's going to take you tons and tons and tons of repetitions to get some success with it.